the point has been made again and again that Arizona took this action because the feds would not act. Is it a legitimate state response to lack of federal action?
I think that there is consensus that there was frustration in the state of Arizona with our broken immigration system. But as Congressman Gutierrez mentioned in your previous piece, the residents of Arizona have 2 senators and they have a congressional delegation that they can pressure to act at the federal level. This Arizona law is not the solution to the immigration system. And that's why we need action at the federal level. And I completely agree with what the congressman was saying, that we need the senators to come forward to negotiate with the Democrats who have come forward and introduced their proposal for a comprehensive immigration reform bill. That's the responsible action that we need to get to the bottom of this problem.
But the people who spurred the Arizona State House to act made the point that they couldn't wait for Washington to get its act together. They couldn't wait for 2 senators, and I think they have 8 members of their delegation in the House of Representatives from Arizona, to pressure another 427 and another 98 people to do something in an area of law that affected their lives every day, affected the operation of the county hospitals, affected the operation of the schools, they affected the enforcement of local labor laws. Yes, they do have a congressional delegation, but boy, that's a lot to ask them, to 2 senators and 8 members of the House to move a great big bill on their own.
Well, it wouldn't be on their own, and they need to work with those who have already expressed interest to move comprehensive immigration reform, because we can't continue to see this type of law that the administration officials have called a misguided law. There are numerous members of the state delegation who have called this misguided. So we can't continue to see this type of action. I understand the frustration of the people in Arizona. I think that that's something that's clear, but the response is not the responsible response that we need to see.
Jack Martin?
You know, Ray, a little bit of perspective I think is useful on this, that it used to be that the argument was that immigration is a federal level and the states ought to stay out of it, and that began to change as some of the Latino organizations got active in pushing state legislatures to adopt provisions to provide driver's licenses to illegal aliens, to provide in-state tuition to illegal immigrants in the universities, to recognize the Mexican identity cards that were being issued by the consulates in the United States. And all of a sudden, members of the state legislatures woke up to the fact that they do have an area of responsibility and jurisdiction with regard to immigration-related issues. Not only could they decide not to issue driver's licenses or not to recognize the Mexican consular ID cards, but they also had the ability to decide that they could adopt policies that would discourage the settlement of illegal immigrants in those states. And that's what the states have been increasingly doing. They're doing so with a lot of public support, even with regard to the Arizona law, with regard to all of these statements that are being put out by legislators, like we just saw, suggesting that this was going to lead to racial profiling. The Arizona law has a tremendous amount of public support, not only in Arizona, but across the country.
Eleanor, isn't Jack Martin right when he says that states are implicated in these matters, even if there is a separation of powers, even if there is a well-established jurisprudence concerning what a state responsibility is versus a federal responsibility? The states are in the mix.
There's no doubt about the fact that states are impacted by our federal immigration policy, but that doesn't suddenly move the power to regulate and enforce immigration laws from a federal agency to all the individual 50 states, not in the least. You mentioned earlier 287G agreements. Those are agreements with states, but they're actually creatures of federal law, not state law. They require state cooperation with federal immigration enforcement officials. They don't give license to state officials to act on their own with respect to the enforcement of federal immigration laws. So yes, I agree that states are impacted. There's no doubt about it. But the authority to regulate immigration law has been federal and continues to be a federal right. Otherwise, we would have inconsistent application of immigration laws all across the country. We don't have a national interest in that because we need to know on a national basis kind of who's coming in, whether they're permitted to come in, and what the standards are. We can't have differing standards from state to state.
People have been sending us their comments on YouTube. Let me share a couple of, because I'm getting old, I have to take my glasses off to do it, but the comments are interesting. Need a Job USA writes, the Arizona trespassing law has passed completely through the legislature. Arizona has a constitutional right to protect its citizens. The federal government cannot override states' rights. Look it up during the Civil War. This law will not be declared unconstitutional, and if it is, Arizona has a right to separate from the Union. This is all the fault of the federal government for not keeping a promise to enforce since 1986. The will of the people will be changing our politicians, just as in Massachusetts. Baseman writes, what about upholding the immigration laws of the nation? Illegal alien supporters have been telling us for years that we don't have the right to enforce immigration laws. What a bunch of bull. All illegal aliens should be detained and deported. And from Goru, the immigration system is badly broken. The truth is that we need most of these people in order to keep the prices low, but at the same time, some of them commit crimes. I'm for legalization to all the hardworking immigrants and for deportation to all the criminals. Also, we need to stop the flow of illegal immigrants. We need some people to come and work here, but that doesn't mean we can open our borders for millions of people. Immigration reform now.